Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It's been a lot of stuff in the news the last few days, actually the last 7 days when it comes to mass shootings. We want to talk about that today, talk about some potential legislation that's being encouraged because of that, taking advantage of the moment, of course. And then we also want to talk about is this a distraction? And then what all this means for folks like you and I. Before I get started, I want to mention a website that you can go to if you are looking for long-term food storage products, like the freeze-dried foods and Mylar bags or number 10 cans. You can go to preparewithtravis.com. That's preparewithtravis.com, and you can stock up on all your products. They sell it in the food buckets, and they have recently expanded the amount of food, or not the amount, but the variety, that's the word, variety of foods that they are putting in those food buckets. And this is from My Patriot Supply, and in my opinion, I think they're about the best value for calorie versus dollar that you're going to get in long-term food storage. So preparewithtravis.com. So there's been 7 shootings in the last several days. I believe I'm correct on this, and I think I've got some slides here to go through of the different shootings. Not all of them were as catastrophic as some, meaning that everyone was killed, and some of them they were just mostly injured. It's just varied, but there's been several, and of course they're in the news a lot, and one always kind of wonders, why is it that all of a sudden there's, these kind of things, they just all of a sudden just pop out of nowhere, and you get several of them, and they always coincide with something going on that's either a distraction to whatever else is going on, or it just happens that these shootings happen right when, gun control legislation is trying to be pushed through. And in fact, this time, both of those things are what's happening. There is definitely some gun control legislation that is in the works to be passed, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The first thing I want to mention, though, about this is this a distraction? Because it seems funny that the heat is starting to be put on the Biden administration with this border crisis, with the kind of fumbling of the ball with China and Russia and even North Korea here lately, and how it's becoming more apparent how the global stage views Joe Biden as the president. And so maybe this is a distraction. I mean, there's recent images here that are being released. Some of these were snuck out by probably someone that works in one of these facilities, and some of them are actually released by congressional members that were able to get inside. And these are those cages that you hear about. Remember, you heard about them with Donald Trump and how he was such a bad president. Well, there's way more people down there now. People are flooding across the border by the thousands every day, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot being done about it. We talked about this in a past video recently of how it does appear like there was some kind of encouragement, even though the administration denies that there was an encouragement for these people to flood across the border once he was placed into office. And then now you've got thousands and thousands of minors alone, basically locked in cages. I mean, that's a pretty awful looking situation. It looks like these kids are just laying on concrete floors with just nothing but a Mylar emergency blanket over them. It doesn't look like they really have any kind of padding underneath them, or a pillow, or real blankets. There's all kinds of reports, if you haven't seen, of the amount of violence that's coming out of these facilities. They're trying to ship them all over the country, to Dallas and all the way up even to the Canadian border. They've recently worked out a deal where they're going to spend about $86 million to start putting these in hotels across the nation. I mean, we couldn't do that for our National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. They had to sleep on cold concrete floors, but we're going to put these illegals that come into the country illegally, hence the name illegal, into hotels and pay for that. And so this kind of stuff is starting to catch a little momentum. You know, at first, of course, the media and the left just wanted to ignore it, but it's almost like it's gotten out there so much now that they can't really ignore it too much longer. And then all of a sudden we have a lot of mass shootings. And they are tragic, and I don't want to discount that factor, that it's tragic and that people are injured and people are dying. But it's a sad thing that's true, that government never misses the opportunity to take advantage of an emergency. And I'm pretty sure that's probably what's happening here. It could be more devious than that, but we won't go into that in this video. I'm already walking a fine line as of whether this video is going to get deleted on YouTube. And if this video gets deleted on YouTube, it'll be over on BitChute. I'll load it up there and get a link to you guys and gals so that you can go watch it there if YouTube disapproves of this video. So we've got a potential distraction going on, if that's possibly part of it. Like I said, between the border issue and then things going on with Russia and China, and just the appearance of what the world is starting to look at Joe Biden like, how they're starting to see through what he really is. Not that there was probably much doubt to begin with. But then there's this other factor. There were already gun legislation being proposed. There's already legislation in Congress right now. And I want to remind all of you that we are dealing with a Democrat-controlled House, Senate, and presidency. And as it looks right now, even though technically conservatives are the majority on the Supreme Court, they don't look very conservative here lately. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Supreme Court of upholding traditional constitutional values. There's two bills that have passed the House that are headed to the Senate, and both of those are dealing with background checks of increasing how many what background checks we do or they do, and then also the length of time for a background check. So those are the two bills being proposed. But there's another one. It's called H.R. 127. And it is probably the worst gun control bill ever put into Congress that actually has the potential of making it to the president's desk. And this thing would basically shred the Second Amendment, at least what's left of it. It would completely shred it. And if this thing happens, they could say, well, you can still technically own guns, but it's going to be extremely difficult to own them, and it's going to be even more difficult to own ammunition to actually make those guns usable. And again, remember, they control the House and the Senate. And I think that there's a strong possibility, even if there's a filibuster and they need 60, which would mean they would need what? 10 Republican votes to pass. There's probably 10 Republicans in that Senate that are basically big old rhinos and could easily be swayed to vote for this. And this isn't just, a coincidence, folks. In the last few days, there's been several members of Congress using the news of these shootings to say, hey, this is what we need. There's people all over the internet. And as of today, former President Barack Obama has called for more gun control because of all this. And just before the making of this video, Joe Biden was giving a speech, I believe, at the White House, and he said, basically, we've got to, ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines because they're evil. They are produced in the pits of hell, and we cannot have those in our country. These evil weapons. And so there's definitely a push for that. And for the first time in a very long time, maybe ever, as a nation, we have the motivation. We have the media backing it. We have a growing population, growing percentage of population of people that are supporting it. We have control of basically all three branches, especially the two that control laws being produced. And like I said, we have the nation as a whole rapidly moving to the progressive left. And so those of you that's seen bills be produced and sent to Congress, and then watch them fail over and over again because they're too far left on the gun control issue. Don't think that this may be just another one of those things. They're going to, introduce the bill and it's just going to fall flat on its face, and, we'll move on. And then probably in a couple of years, if we're lucky, they're actually going to let, the conservatives win an election and take back over take back over the House, and then that'll stop everything. That's why they're pushing so hard in Congress for a lot of this stuff, because they want to get everything they can get in before that possibly happens. And let me tell you, don't put all your faith in that happening. If you still have any faith whatsoever in the election system, which I assure you mine is long since gone. What does that mean for you and I, though? Well, it's bigger than just gun control. I mean, that's obviously the first thing. They wanna clamp down on guns. They want to make it harder for you to own weapons, and because the left is always the progressives, Marxists, and they all hate guns. Well, they hate that you own guns. Let's be clear on that. But it's more than just not being able to own a gun or having to go through a lot more hoops to get that weapon. It's bigger than that, folks. You all should know this. I feel like I don't even need to say it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. That's the one thing that's kind of that last line of defense, that last little barrier that globalists, communists, Marxists, totalitarian regimes, tyranny, that's the last line of defense in the stand that they have to cross, or that they would have to cross, to completely take all of your freedoms. And we are seeing this happen over and over again. I mean, we're one of the last few countries that people have that, freedom to actually own a firearm, to defend themselves, and not just for hunting, but actually defend against tyranny. And tyranny, globalism, all that's the same. It's spreading across this planet, like a virus, a real one. And we're kind of that last line of defense here in the United States. And with the Great Reset and all the globalist agendas, they know they've got to get rid of that here in the United States before they can fully implement, their will, their plan. And so I don't think it's any shock or any surprise whatsoever that this is being proposed. And maybe it is just a coincidence that there's been multiple shootings just in the last week that kind of bring this issue back to the forefront. And so that all these people that are moderates or the liberals or whatever, they, oh, wow, yes, we do need to take care of those. We kind of forgot about that. We kind of forgot about those dangerously black rifles with those big, massive clips in them that hold hundreds and hundreds of rounds, and you can shoot all of them with just one pull of the trigger, that kind of stuff. This is reminding them of how dangerous and deadly it is that all these crazy extremists, because remember, that's also being talked about a lot, and being taught in the military that you and I are extremists. It's kind of a bunch of puzzle pieces being put together. Do you see that? So what are we supposed to do about it? Well, I mean, the simple answer that you're going to hear everywhere is you need to be, ringing the phone hooks off and filling up the email inboxes of your local representative and your local senator on the federal level. You also need to be dealing with it on the state level. You need to get the states involved with trying to pass legislation that would stop this kind of stuff. I know there's this debate on whether a state can do that or not, but if enough states try, I think, whether or not the Constitution explicitly allows that or not, if enough states do it and stand their ground, it's going to be hard for the feds to overcome all of that. So there are multiple things you can do from a legislative, political, legal standpoint. But we all know that in the end, the way things are going here lately, that laws, and especially the Constitution, has little value to them. Remember what George W. Bush said? I won't repeat his words because he said a word I don't use. But he said it's just a blankety-blank piece of paper. And most politicians today, I think, probably consider it not much different than a roll of Charmin. So those of you that fall back and say, well, our Constitution prohibits that, or our state laws prohibit that, or they can't legally do that, or it's unconstitutional for them to do that, they don't care about that. Most of these, face diaper mandates are completely unconstitutional on a state and federal level, and even illegal, based on, state laws and a lot of other things that they've been doing, social distancing and shutting businesses down and stuff. There's no laws allowing them to do that, but they do it anyways, and people just back down and let it. So do you think that they're going to care about what's legal and constitutional when it comes to this? And then, of course, there's also the issue of if they pass these laws and that we have to turn them in and no one does, how are they going to round them up? Well, that's where all this training that we're talking about in the military comes into play. And if you've read some of my comments over that video, go back and watch that video where I talk about what's going on in the comments, and then read some of the comments there. There's people in there that are current and recently former military, and hear their side of the story. And they'll tell you, they have no faith. And these guys are current and former active duty military personnel, and they're saying, folks, quit having faith that your military is going to stop this, because they've been working on them for years, and it's only getting worse. This is what's happened in other nations. Look at Venezuela. I mention them all the time. Venezuela, one of the first things they did was guns. When they started becoming a socialist nation, and then eventually it led to the economic crisis, and it led to their country just basically having a complete totalitarian government over the people. And how were they able to do that? Well, no one was able to fight back. There was no fear from the government, what are they going to do? Stand out and protest? Well, we can eventually take care of that. Who cares? We live anymore in a very docile nation, and it's very sad. The other day at our local meeting here in the Ozarks, I was talking to some guys, and we were talking about that, about how crazy it is to see Europe, what Americans have always laughed as being a little bit more, frail compared to us rugged, pioneering Americans. And here they are actually really standing up against their government over these shutdowns and health crisis mandates. And the majority of Americans aren't. So I have no faith that Americans would stand up against this either. There may be a few, but there's too few of us. That doesn't necessarily mean it's all failed, and our attempt to freedom has failed and we've lost. It just means you need to be careful. You need to, number one, you need to live in a state that they don't even have to do kind of checks. Here in Missouri, you can purchase from individuals without any paperwork. There's no permit system or anything. That's helpful right there. It's legal. I'm not telling you to do something illegal. In Missouri and other states, it's totally legal. You need to be careful about what you have and to broadcast. And I see people all the time online posting pictures about their gear and stuff. Man, don't do that. Or talking about how much ammo they just purchased. Stop. Everything you post like that, I assure you it's being recorded and saved. They know exactly where you're at. They saw your credit card purchases at Joe Schmo's gun shop. They saw that they connected it to the picture that you posted online. They know. So stop broadcasting that information. And work on building community, because in the end, if the things get really bad, and I mean really bad, at least we have numbers, several people. And don't tell me, because we talked about this at the meeting the other day too. Don't tell me that, well, we can't stand up against them. We're just regular farmers and regular people with civilian weaponry. Well, there's, this thing called Afghanistan, and multiple nations have been over there trying to tame that nation down, and they're just a bunch of sandal-wearing, ragtag farmers with 60-year-old weapons and pitchforks and everything else, and we still are there. So don't tell me that in the end, we could not stand against an army of more technology and more people, because it can happen, and it has happened, and it is happening on this planet as we speak. So this is a very serious thing. I think unlike in the past, when we see these ridiculous gun bills, I think they're more like feelers. They're kind of softening that blow. They're tenderizing the meat, you know? I think this time they're ready to put that slab of meat on the frying pan or the sizzle on the grill. And it's hot and it's ready. And they're showing no signs of backing down, and they're wanting to do this. And they control it all anyways. So don't be so surprised in the coming weeks if we don't see gun bills just being proposed and passed and passed and passed. This may actually be the final nail in the coffin for this great nation of freedom that once was. So do whatever you can to get ready for it, folks. I may be over-exaggerating things on this, but this is one of those I don't think I am. All right, folks, thank you for watching. Catch you in the next video.